Sometimes, justice doesn't arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes, it walks into a high school cafeteria wearing a backpack and a calm expression that hides years of pain. The sound came first, a sharp crack echoing through Lincoln High's cafeteria, followed by a scream that froze 300 students in silence. But it wasn't the scream they expected. On the floor lay Tyler Morrison, the golden boy, the wrestling captain, the mayor's son, clutching his broken wrist as tears ran down his face. Standing over him was Kesha Williams, 17 years old, the new transfer student from Detroit. Her expression was calm, almost detached, as she looked down at the boy who, only seconds earlier, had tried to twist her arm behind her back. "Someone should call the nurse," she said quietly, shifting her backpack over her shoulder. Her voice didn't carry anger or triumph, only an unsettling calm, the kind that made everyone nearby take a step back. For 2 weeks, Kesha had endured Tyler's taunts, the whispers, the looks, the cruel jokes about her clothes, her skin, the city she came from. Everyone knew Tyler. He wasn't just a bully. He was the untouchable prince of Lincoln High, shielded by his father's power and his own reputation. No one dared to stand up to him. Until now. As Principal Peterson pushed through the crowd, his first instinct was to address Tyler, because of course, it couldn't have been his fault. But before he could speak, Kesha pulled out her phone and said calmly, "Actually, I recorded everything." And with that, the balance of power in Lincoln High shifted forever. The next few days were chaos. Tyler's version of the story unraveled. As the video spread quietly among students, it showed every insult, every threat, every attempt to provoke her. It also showed that moment when he grabbed her wrist, and how she'd responded with precise, practiced control. It wasn't luck. It was training. By the third day, Tyler was no longer the predator. He was the subject of whispers, side glances, and doubt. The same friends who had laughed at his cruelty now avoided his eyes. His wrist wasn't the only thing broken. So was the illusion that he could never be challenged. But Kesha's calm wasn't victory. It was calculation. She hadn't transferred to Lincoln High by chance. She had chosen it. Because 3 years earlier, her brother, Marcus, had attended a similar elite school not far away, and never came home. Marcus had been brilliant, full of dreams, and proud of the scholarship that had given him a chance at a better future. But 6 months into his new school, his letters began to change. Excitement turned into anxiety. He wrote about being mocked, isolated, pushed to the edge by the sons of powerful families. And then, one night, a party. Too much alcohol, they said. An accident, they said. Marcus had fallen from a second-story balcony. The case was closed in 2 weeks. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses recanted. And the boy who had hosted the party, a young man named Tyler Morrison, posted pictures that vanished 2 days later. Kesha had read Marcus's last letter hundreds of times. "The truth always comes out," he had written. "But sometimes it needs a little help." From that day, she made him a promise. She would be that help. For 3 years she prepared. She studied law, self-defense, digital forensics. She learned patience, how to wait for the right moment, how to build a case piece by piece until it was unbreakable. When she earned a scholarship to Lincoln High, she didn't hesitate. She knew exactly where she was going, and why. So when Tyler tried to humiliate her, it wasn't chance. It was the first move in a plan she had been building since the night Marcus died. Every insult he threw, every threat, every word, she recorded them all. And when he finally tried to use his father's influence to have her expelled, she was ready. Because Kesha wasn't alone. Behind her quiet transfer paperwork was a federal task force, agents, who had been tracking patterns of discrimination and cover-ups in Connecticut's private schools. Kesha wasn't just a student. She was their eyes and ears. And Tyler, blinded by arrogance, had just handed her everything she needed. The morning he walked into the cafeteria with his friends, waving fake suspension papers and boasting about his father's connections. She let him talk. Every word was captured. Every racist remark. Every threat. And when she looked up and smiled for the first time, it wasn't in victory. It was because she knew the trap had finally closed. A few days later, when federal agents walked into Lincoln High and asked for Tyler Morrison, The cafeteria went silent again. Students watched as the same boy, who had ruled there, school, was led away in handcuffs. His face pale, his confidence gone. And beside the agent stood Kesha, her expression unreadable. The investigation that followed tore through the town like a storm. Mayor Morrison was arrested for obstruction of justice. The principal resigned. Files long buried resurfaced, showing how minority students had been pushed out of the school system for years to protect the privileged. And the case of Marcus Williams, officially closed as an accident, was reopened as a homicide. In court, Tyler tried to defend himself, but the evidence was overwhelming. The photos, the messages, the recordings. One by one, the lies collapsed. He was sentenced to 15 years for manslaughter and obstruction. His father lost everything: his office, his wealth, his reputation. Months later, the old Morrison mansion became a community center for underprivileged youth. On the wall inside the main hall hung a single framed photo: Marcus Williams, smiling, holding a science fair trophy. Justice wasn't the sound of a gavel. It was the silence that followed, when a corrupt system finally crumbled. At 18, she joined the Federal Bureau of Investigation as its youngest special agent in training, focusing on hate crimes in schools. She carried her brother's memory everywhere, not as a wound, but as a purpose. During a memorial ceremony months later, she stood before a crowd of families and students and said quietly, "My brother once told me that the truth always comes out. He was right. It just needed someone brave enough to open the door." There was no applause, just quiet tears, and a deep sense that something good had finally come from something unbearably cruel. Tyler Morrison once tried to break the arm of a black girl from Detroit. He didn't know that the moment he reached for her wrist, he was already trapped in a story written long before he ever met her. A story about justice, persistence, and the strength of a promise made between a brother and a sister. Kesha Williams didn't fight for revenge. She fought for the truth. And when she finally found it, she didn't shout. She simply stood still and let the silence speak for her. Because sometimes, justice doesn't need noise. It only needs proof, and the courage to show it to the world.